Hello and welcome to Clay to Canopy, the show where I attempt to make just about everything from the ground up. It is week 5. It's the beginning of week 5 of Don't Wake the Dragon build series. I call it week 5, but it's week 5 of the construction part of the exterior because there's going to be a whole nother half of the series where I'm building out the interior. I gotta be honest, I'm not sure how the next couple of weeks are gonna go. You can see me here all suited up in sleeves. The last vlog was having issues with the fiberglass, and I thought it was only gonna be an issue when I'm applying the fiberglass and cutting the strips, but as I was sanding, I was starting to have issues again, so that means that this entire part of the process of glassing with the fiberglass cloth, I'm gonna need to be sleeved up. The reason why this is a problem is because this is our heat season. We go from like high 90s, we can have high 90s. Thankfully today's supposed to be like a little cooler in the 80s. Because of that, I'm not sure how much I'm gonna be able to get done while I'm out here because now I'm extra layered. And also I'm back to work, so my schedule is a little bit less than what it was. Today is August 19th. You probably will not be seeing this till sometime in September, maybe even October. I have many pieces that I have assembled in parts. They all have multiple pieces connected to them. It's growing and it's getting there, and it looks like just a bunch of parts right now, but I tend to work that way. It used to happen all the time when I was like in school. People would see just a bunch of pieces one day and then poof, it all comes together. It's just the way I work. It's a very modular way of working. It's a way of trained myself to better use the materials. Starting out my career as female and not always as strong in the beginning. I mean, I'm getting stronger, right, because I'm lifting weights. And also being kind of an outcast. In a woodworking department, there were only 2 females and the rest were all males, and they all had this, like, we're the dudes and we can do everything. And, you know, I kind of had to learn to, like, no, I can do this alone. So in order to do that part of it, I had to learn how to work in a very modular fashion. In my head, it's like a giant puzzle piece that all comes together. I see parts and parts and parts, and then boom, it just all comes together. So right now, it looks like a graveyard of random geometric shapes that don't amount to anything. I'm going to continue on with those random geometric shapes that don't look like much of anything. What I have left off with is the pieces are sanded. They are ready to go to match new pieces to and go right into the glue up. I'm really excited and happy to be out in my studio today. It has been a week, and I'm just happy to be here. Alright, so I'm gonna go take a look at matching up some parts and see where I am for the day. Poor model could use some triage right about now. You know what, I have barely even had a cup of coffee, but my son has not been out here much this week because I've been at work, and so he was itching to have me get dressed and get out here because he's like terrified of Sly, so he won't come out here alone anymore. I'm like, can I at least have coffee? And he was just pestering me all morning, under my feet. Come on, let's go. I'm barely functioning right now. I have these clusters of bits that are put together. I've got one section, and I'm trying to debate where it lines up. The reason why I've been kind of loose about these angles and about the matching up of sections is I know I had a lot of room to play. As long as I hit close to what they are, when this cluster comes together with this cluster, wherever that line now lands, I don't need to make an angled piece of bracket. It'll have some room, some give to kind of match it up the way I need it to. And here comes the trash cans because it's just the way it is, right? Anyhow, what I'm doing right now is I have a stack of single panels that haven't gotten worked into the big pieces yet, the clusters. So I'm trying to look at this thing and figure out where I'm going to have the best amount of play left to me. In this neck, these 2 pieces are assembled right now, and these 2 pieces are assembled right now, and these 2 pieces are assembled right now. So I have 27D, and I'm debating, do I attach 27D to 27E or 27C, 27B combination? So does this get attached to here first, or does it get attached to here first? Because there are still some pieces that are unknowns that I have not created yet. I kind of left those also loose so that once I assembled parts and it was rigid, I could measure. This neck piece is one of those pieces. This is a piece I had to create to join the head to the body. It's just paper that I folded up and made, and I never really took measurements of what this was going to be. This is an unknown, which means this is a whole lot of room for play in this area, where if it doesn't line up right, it's okay. I can just fudge whatever this piece is gonna be and measure it off of the thing once the pieces all come together. So in this case, I've decided that the best course of action is to join 27D, this angular piece, to this section. So it's gonna be a funky looking shape with this hanging off, because once these two are together, that allows me the ability to take these two pieces that are also sitting over there and connect them into a 4-pot pack. That way, when I go to join these clusters, I only am joining this one seam. There's a bit of play in here. It'll get stiffened once the epoxy hardens, and then I can figure out what the heck's going on in that area. So this is the game I'm playing right now with all of the clustered pieces. The main thing is that the two large pieces, I really didn't want to add much more onto because they're pretty large and cumbersome. Every time I add a new piece, I'm moving around an even bigger cluster. So I didn't touch the two because adding another piece to that is insane. There's gonna come a moment where I have enough pieces that once they all get laced together, it's just gonna all come together all at once. And I'm waiting on those larger pieces to do that and not do it here. And I'm gonna have to figure out how this is gonna go, because at that point, I think I'm gonna be epoxying out under the canopy. The pieces are gonna be too big for in here. All right, more coffee. Sometimes I work backwards just so that it's easier to see in the camera, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's easier for me to actually do the dang thing. I think that's like years of classroom demos where you have to do everything kind of backwards from the normal way you would work, so that the kids who are standing on the other side of the classroom, like the demo table, can see what the heck you're doing. Alright, so for this one it's decision time. There's a bit too much flex, so I either have to make a bracket, try and see if I can hold it with tuck tape, or do this in 2 goes where I seam one line. Once that hardens, it should be enough to pull the other. Do I want to bother waiting that long? I never want to bother waiting that long. I'm gonna make a bracket. I don't think that the bracket has to be all that complicated. I probably could just take a strip of wood and screw it to the outside panels on both sides, and it'll just kind of bring it together. Yeah, I think that might be what I do. I've hit that point where things like this are probably going to start arising all the time. This is fixed and this is pinched here. Now this part was something that I made. It was supposed to be a full, I think, is this a full panel? No, it's not. I lied. Never mind. In order to bring this in, I need to chop some of this end because it's pinching there, and I need this to all come together evenly. I screwed this up, but this is why you don't just whack on the epoxy. You gotta dry fit all the pieces. I'm gonna take this back a line, probably where this stupid chip happened, shave this down a bit so that I can get this to kind of come in a little bit more. Let's see, if I held a straight edge, it's probably not so straight. Pop these out. Kind of feeling like not much might happen today other than me trying to fit these pieces, because if this is how the process is going to go, I'm feeling the heat already, and it might be just that I prep all these pieces and get them waxed together and then come out and do my actual attaching tomorrow. I don't know, we'll see, because I'm like dying right now in these long sleeve and it's not even a hot day. Let's see, I could jigsaw. Jigsaw's kind of rough, too big for the bandsaw. I think we're gonna jig and then sand. Jigga. Still half awake. So I'm in goofball mode. Extra goofball. I mean goofball all the time, but you know what's extra goofball today. Extra goofballness for free on this channel. This is a good time to remind you that power tools are incredibly dangerous and you should not operate them unless you have training. That move that I just did is actually a pretty freaking dicey one with my hands up in the air. The jigsaw is actually my very first tool, that and a drill, and it's kind of become like my left hand, an extension of me. That's not to say that those kind of moves you should do. Had over 20 years of experience with woodworking. The point is, don't try this kind of crap at home unless you get some training. I could use an extra pair of hands right now, if only. When my dad was in the Philippines, he was a professional ballroom dancer on the side to earn some extra money. His day job was a cop in the intelligence division of the police force. So when they couldn't catch the bad guys, they would send my dad in and he'd come up with some kind of plan to trap them. But in his free time, he taught ballroom dancing. My parents used to have date night when they'd go out and dance every weekend. So I lost my dad. We've talked about this at some point if you've been watching my channel. I lost my dad over 10 years ago when I first came out here. He had 2 strokes. His second stroke is the one that took him. First stroke, he was actually in the mall dancing at the mall with my mom. He had a stroke and my aunt saw his face and could see what was happening, but he just kept dancing. Even though he was like in the middle of a stroke, he just kept going. And so I have this thing that sometimes when I feel like life is throwing too much crap at me and I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed, that I have recite this mantra. My daddy just taught me to keep on dancing. I don't know, music for me and being in the studio, sometimes when things are kind of crappy or not going the way I wanted to go, I throw on some headphones, come out here, dance a bit, and repeat that mantra in my head. My daddy taught me to just keep on dancing. Kind of awful, you know. Aunt figured out what was happening and grabbed him and dealt with that situation. That was his first stroke. Anyway, I realized I got these 3 big pieces. As they start getting bigger, they're becoming more involved in handling them. And I'm worried that if I do too many pieces at once, I'm going to be in over my head. So I'm going to just do these 3 pieces that I have got set up and then see where the day gets me. I think that in my head, this feels like this process is moving really slow. But as I started looking at the footage of daily dumps, a lot came together in just a few days, and I'm not giving myself enough credit for how much volume is actually happening in these pieces. I think I get to this point where I'm just constantly staring at pieces and I'm like, enough already, when is it going to come together? I think that's been a good experience for me dealing with videoing my work. I'm a solitary studio artist. I don't really like being in big communities with too much noise. It's too much distraction for me. I love being around other artists. I love chatting, but I have to have the right mix in order to be able to function and produce. So I'm kind of like more of a solitary being in my own practice. I feel like it's a very spiritual place for me when I'm out here doing things that feels like I'm bogged down with things that take an age and I don't see much progress. Videoing has helped me get a grander perspective, something that maybe like your other counterparts in a studio environment where it's more of a community based would see what you're doing and what you're working on and can give you feedback. That's the one aspect of being a solitary studio artist that is kind of missing sometimes, that I don't get enough feedback. So hopefully y'all don't be shy, give me some feedback, right? This is an ongoing process. Changed out of those clothes, finished up the 2 pieces. I actually just left one of them in the shade because it was getting too large. On the other side of the canopy I have quite a bit of room, so I just left it in place to do the epoxying. I changed because it was just way too hot, and I think I'm probably not going to do any more epoxying today. It's already noon. I've only got till 3. Probably just going to match up some pieces, make brackets if I need to, and then, that was wet. I thought it was a hardened piece. Match up some more pieces so that I'd be ready to go for tomorrow. The mosquitoes! Yeah! Brackets everywhere! What am I doing? What am I doing? Safety glasses. And back to the long sleeves and apron. Ooh, I'm gonna call it here, and then I will be out here bright and early tomorrow to start sanding. Where's my bag? Good morning. It is Saturday morning. I am fortunate enough to have an overcast day, so hopefully get some cranking done. My plan for today is to get the 6 pieces I have assembled clustered. I'm gonna call them clusters, right? Clustered together, all of these bits popped off, and get the seam lines put on. As I was going over the joints with the tape with the second layer of lines, there's still the opposite side, so I did the inside or the outside of one seam line, but I didn't do the opposite side. I feel like it's going to be much easier while they're in smaller clusters to hit those pieces as well, rather than me putting this entire thing together. And I put in a little bit of tape just to hold it in place so that I could pop these off and run a full seam line. The opposite line that I haven't done, I've done, the inside of this one. I've done the inside of this one, so to fix the outside of this one, I'm just gonna do one strip. I'm gonna take care of that on all of these pieces today, but before I can get to that, obviously I've gotta deal with some sanding as usual on these pieces. I think I've gotten a little bit better with trying to smooth out the epoxy as I put it on here, even though, I've been I've been thickening it, but I think I've done a better job, hopefully, right? So it should save me some time on the sand. I'm gonna get to work and take advantage of this overcast day without this massive heat, and hopefully I can get quite a bit done. My little peanut is wanting an insane amount of attention, and she went away into the garden for a bit to play while I was able to get this piece sanded, but because I'm over there working on the ground, she just wants to cuddle. I've got a respirator on because I don't want this crap in my lungs. I don't want it in their lungs either, and my babies come first. So I've swept up. I've been constantly sweeping up after me as soon as I dust with this stuff, but I want her to have a little bit of time out in the yard. She's still recovering from several weeks ago of her injury. My babies come first. They're my kids. I'm sure if you are a parent, you know what I'm talking about. She needs her playtime. So I'm going to move on to, this is such a large piece anyway, I'm going to go ahead and glass the extra pieces that needed to be done. I didn't get any filler in. I think it's time to rip out the wood flour. So I'm going to make a go mixing up a batch that has wood flour and make more of a peanut butter, is what they call it, to plug these holes. I think it's going to have to do this in 2 goes. I think I'm going to have to mix up the peanut butter, put the peanut butter in, and then have another hit of sanding. So I'm just going to stick with this one piece right now, this one cluster, because it's so large. So let's have a go at that. This funky space, there was gapping because the epoxy never filled in where that comes together. That's the whole thing that prompted me to make this peanut butter in the first place. But I'm concerned, it's very thin in some areas, and I need to actually cut open the fiberglass and fill. But I don't want to do that until some of this is sealed, because that tape was supposed to become a brand new line. And that means that the only thing holding it together are the bits that actually stuck. I went over wherever there was void that I could get into with the peanut butter. I'm gonna let this dry, then go back and cut it open and add another layer of peanut butter. I mixed up too much. I didn't know how much I was gonna need, so I went out and did one of the pieces out there because I had some extra. I think what I'm gonna do is regroup out there, rearrange some things, and before I even bother sanding those other things, I might as well go ahead and mix up new batches of peanut butter and seam the lines the same way. Alright y'all, it is Sunday morning. My peanut butter has cured. It's still a little bit tacky. I think that the peanut butter actually takes a little bit longer to cure than the plain epoxy mix. But here's the deal. I'm kind of glad that all I did yesterday was to fill in these joints with the peanut butter and walk away. Because anytime I walk away from a project, I'm not like really walking away, at least not mentally. I was thinking a lot about this process, and the next step is to start glassing full sheets. So I do need to apply full sheets of glass to these panels so that it strengthens this 1/4 inch plywood. Otherwise, you could punch this thing, it would knock through a hole. So the seaming parts that are happening are there to join the pieces together, but ultimately the entire surface of everything needs to be glassed both on the outside and the inside for weatherproofing purposes and for strengthening purposes. In my head, I'm like, oh, I've got all of these clusters of sections that I'm gonna go ahead and put together. But then I'm like, okay, when I go to apply these massive sheets of glass, I'm gonna be like dangling with glass over my head trying to figure out things because it's going to be together in a form. So I have revamped my plan, which means that in this vlog, this is probably not coming together in a form. I'm still going to be dealing with these clusters. I want to deal with clusters that are a little bit more manageable in size. My point is that I'm going to sand the crap out of these things as I was planning on. I'm going to begin glassing the clusters as is. I've got these clusters together, but when I start grouping them up next to each other, there's going to be areas that I might need to make a piece of something that's going to get wedged in there. The best thing to do, I think, is to glass the pieces that I have with the clear glass, then get the thing together, and then from that point, I can then begin adding in the fabrics on the outside. Before I do all of that though, I still have to make the paw part that I've set aside. I have the head to make. While I was stepped away from this, I have also been thinking a lot about the stained glass panel. I have come up with some other ideas for that. I really think that I want to cut the tree out of one solid piece, the tree framing, and I think I'm going to need that section, which is the framing around of this section. I think I'm going to need that to hold this thing together when I go to apply these panels. So this might be another reason why I have to stop this process and I only am dealing with these parts and clusters temporarily until I actually go and start working on the stained glass panel, or at least the negative space part, so that I have this frame to attach to this structure. As of right now, what's going to happen is I'm going to continue on, glass these bits. I do have some clusters over there that are only 2 or 3 panels. I'm going to see if I can condense them down, if they can get attached to anything else. It is the first week back to campus coming up, and so things are a little bit chaotic, and I have catch up and things that I'm doing. So tomorrow is not going to be a studio day. Hopefully Wednesday will be a studio day, and I will finish out this vlog with whatever happens on Wednesday. All right, suiting up, gonna sand. I left the babies in the house so that I can get some sanding done and a good cleanup. It is still early, and then that way I can let them out away from all the dust and whatnot. It took almost 3 hours to do that sanding of those 6 clustered pieces. I don't think that I'm going to do much more today other than being able to seal these joints. It's a little after 1 o'clock. My energy is a little bit more drained than usual because it's been so hot that I just haven't felt like eating anything. The only thing I've been doing is like chugging protein shakes and eating like a meal a day. But that also is affecting my energy level because if I'm not taking in enough calories, I'm lagging in the day. Aside from the many things I need to plan, tomorrow I need to sort out some things that I can quickly grab and go and start dealing with some meal prepping. For the rest of today, I'm going to go ahead and try and get tape onto these clusters wherever I can. I'm going to only do one side at a time because it is very overcast right now and I don't think that these will cure. So my goal is seam one side. I'm really trying to monitor the amount of dust. I've now opened the door so that the kids can come out, but they were like really angry at me for the first 3 hours because it was taking forever for me to sand. I have swept up everything and then I was covered, of course, from head to toe. I just jumped right into the shower so that I was in fresh clothing and so that I can reduce the possibility of me rebreathing anything that might be flying off of me on. And same thing with the babes because, you know, they come to me while I'm working, so. I was able to do 4 of my clusters. Apparently I have 7 clusters. So I have 3 more clusters left to do, and I have run out of the woven fiber cloth. All I have left is this really old, the mat that's kind of laid on top of each other. I don't want to mix stuff, and everything I have been reading has basically said that this type of mat is really hard to bend. I'm really getting on well with the woven stuff. Again, I still have the big sheets because I'm waiting for that to do the big parts of the panel and I don't want to cut those. So I am going to call it for today, hoping I will get out here on Wednesday. Okay, it is Wednesday, August 24th. I am a bit moody today because I have not been sleeping well. I'm not used to, I'm back at school and I have to get up at 6 and I'm not used to the 6 a.m. So by the time I fall asleep, even though I lay down early, it's like probably like 1 in the morning. So I've been running on about 4 or 5 hours by the time I like settle and whatnot. So it's catching up to me. Eventually I will get on this 6 a.m. schedule. I am not there yet. It's probably going to take several weeks. But the other night I was chatting with a buddy of mine. I was actually asking an epoxy question because he is an epoxy resin mold making genius. I keep thinking, oh, this is going to be one of those tired days. I was asking about whether or not it was necessary to have to keep continually sanding in between each layer before I apply the next glass layer, and he said that unless I'm going to build up a whole bunch of glass all at once, that I have to sand in between each one, especially for the type of epoxy resin that I'm using. I'm going to continue this process of sand and apply, sand and apply. I was going to go buy more of these packets from Home Depot so that I could make my own strips, and then I realized that it was pointless because I was wasting money, so I just ordered some more of the big sheets, and I'm waiting for those to come for me to coat the whole thing. And so I'll take one of the big sheets and use that to make tape. Their gardeners are here. It's a Wednesday across the street. It seems like every day there's some random gardener, whatever. Headphones are going on. I'm gonna work. I'm just gonna plow through and see what I can get done today. That's it. So the buddy I was talking about, his name is Smiley from Barnacle Brothers, and I used to work for Barnacle Brothers back when I was a student ages ago. But apparently he said that I have picked one of the more difficult processes doing it through this way. They're stitching glue fiberglassing for a first go. So yeah, I guess it's supposed to be more difficult than, you know, having an actual mold and blowing fiberglass into a mold and epoxy that way. But it's me, right? I don't know. I have this thing with my students too, where sometimes I will like hand them a lump of porcelain and tell them go make a sculpture, not tell them that it's supposed to be the most difficult, finicky clay body to do that with. Because I don't have that philosophy. I kind of think that if you're told that something's going to be difficult, you kind of mentally set yourself up for something, and then it's harder. But if you're never told that it was difficult and you just do it anyway, you never knew. So you don't have that negativity going into it. So whatevs. I don't know. I'm enjoying this process. I think it's a great process. There's a lot of potential to do other things with it. I'm not going to call it difficult, knock on wood, that things keep going the way it's going. It seems to be going all right for me. It's a lot of labor, a lot of sanding, a lot of steps in between things, but I'm enjoying the process. I'm gonna not jinx myself and just run with that. I know I was bringing him up. Anyhow, the other thing he was talking to me about was he kept saying, you gotta insulate this thing, you gotta insulate this thing. And then I was like, couldn't sleep. 2 nights ago, I'm like laying there going, do I need to insulate this thing? I guess for me, I kind of feel like this is literally just a glorified tent. Like if you're gonna pitch a tent out in the middle of somewhere, it's not gonna be insulated. So for the first go, because I need to work out this idea, I need to get a feel for what it's like to build one of these things. I'm not gonna insulate this one. It could be something maybe I do later on in the future. I don't know. For the first go, I'm okay with glorified tent. You can curl up in a sleeping bag. It's mainly gonna be a hangout, like a camping type of space. You know, there's not going to be a bathroom, there's not going to be a kitchen. When I get to a point where I'm making something that's a little bit more like that, then yeah, for sure I'll deal with insulating, but I'm not going to do that now. So it is going to be what it is. By the way, my buddy Barnacle Brothers, who's been nothing but a big sweetheart and a help throughout this process, he is in the Bay Area and is looking for sculptors. So if you are in the Bay Area or know sculptors, he moved from the LA area and is looking for people who know how to do mold making, fiberglassing. And so if you're in that area and you're good peeps and you need a job, you can look up Barnacle Brothers because, like I said, he's a great guy and great place to work. Alright, I'm feeling burnt. I sanded a bunch of stuff and then I only did 2 clusters. This cluster is a big one. This is a 9 cluster segment. So this is a 9 segment cluster. It is a pretty big piece that I've been working, taking quite a while. So I finally have all of the single-sided tape done. I think what I'm gonna do is get all of them up to that point before I try and glass over. So I am disappointed that I'm not going to see this thing start coming together as soon as I would like it to. You know, it's going to be a bit more. I'm going to have to generate some more parts before I can pull this whole thing together. I really think it's going to be necessary for me to get the framing done for the glass panel. It's just a necessary piece in getting the rest of these pieces together. Yeah, it's probably going to be a few more weeks before I get anything mapped out to where I can see the body form. And this is just the body. I still have the head to deal with. I'm gonna call it here for this week. This is week 5. This might be a little bit of a low progress week, but sometimes this is just how it goes. I have a feeling the next couple weeks are gonna be a lot like this, where I am just doing the same process over and over again, and it looks like not much is happening but me doing the same thing over and over and over again until one day, poof, it's all just gonna like come together. Hopefully, I will be out here on Saturday. That will be start of week 6. But otherwise, please like, share, and subscribe if you have not done so already. Stick around to watch this project all come together. And remember, don't wake the dragon.